Sangye chodan soge chonamla chancho bhardo danya. Sangye chodan soge chonamla. Sangye drupara sho, sangye chodan soge chona, hardo dani kyapsu chi, dagi jinso gibe sonamge, drola pinchira sangye drupara sho. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge unto enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I would like to start with one verse which was originally taught by Lama Tsongkhapa. And is the verse with which he starts the commentary on the Tantra, called the commentary on the 5 steps, on the 5 levels of the completion stage, called the Rinpoche. And the verse starts like this. Dirjuk pani kelpa sangweshe lekpar somla gawe shingidang rabsil zumbe nyamdan dempayi Nami Nögi Kyönsum Pongla Nyen, which says, Dirju Pani Kelpa Sangwa She, acknowledge, be aware of how fortunate we are of entering here. It's like telling to us, like he's saying, acknowledge how fortunate you are of entering here. Dirjuk Pani, Juk means to enter, Dir means here. Dirju Pani Kelpa Sangwa She. Know how fortunate you are of entering here. Lekpar somla gawe shingidang. Reflect well upon it, and by reflecting well upon it, upon how precious we are, how fortunate we are of entering here, gawe shingidang. You should resplend with joy. You should be filled of joy by reflecting upon how precious, how fortunate we are of entering here. Lekpar somla gawe shingidang, rabsil zumbe nyamdan dempayi, and within a state of illuminating oneself with a beautiful smile, with an illuminating smile, enlightening smile, rabsil zumbe nyamdan dempayi, nami nögi kyönsum pongla nyen. Listen carefully, abandoning the 3 faults of the 3 faulty containers. Which means, first of all, how fortunate we are of entering here. Here means where? In the Dharma. So we should be full of joy in the moment that we have this precious opportunity when we take, okay, we enter into explaining self-healing. And if we just stop for 1 second to think that normally in our daily life, not only most of the people around us, most of our time is dedicated for what? Survival. No? Which means avoiding suffering, trying to get pleasure. There are different ways of survival. Some are more simple, some are more elaborate, some more fancy. But finally what we are doing? Survival. Which means just letting the life go by. No? Instead, what we are doing now here, it goes beyond that. It means using the abilities we have, using the conditions we have, which means our body, mind, knowledge, awareness, using all of this for what? To develop our qualities. In order to be able really to have a life in which we are more stable, so that we can help others to do the same. Actually, if we really go deeply, truly, what we are doing here when we follow the Dharma is not different, ultimately, of what everyone else is doing all the time, which is making our best to be happy. That's what we do, no? That's one way, if we really look, if we are really sincere with ourselves in a way, how many of us really have the motivation of bodhicitta? Of really, oh, I must go to the retreat because I must reach enlightenment for the benefit of others. Some, I hope. But many of us, the first strength, the first thing that pushes us to do what we do is, I want to be happy, and Dharma makes me more happy. Dharma helps me to be more stable, to deal better with my own negative emotions, to have a more healthy life, inner health, not only outside. And ultimately, we understand that also to help others, we need to be better ourselves also. So bodhicitta also comes along with it. But it is really precious. Not only precious, somehow it is also quite rare, no? If we think how many people really around us go deep into learning and practicing any practice, any activity of inner development or spiritual development as a path for happiness. I don't mean about religion. I mean, it doesn't matter what religion. Generally speaking, comparing to everyone, not so many. No? So, we are very fortunate to enter here. Very fortunate to have this time to dedicate that we can share the Dharma together. What Dharma we are about to share? Self-healing. NgalSo Tantric self-healing. And which is something very special, and I will just tell in a few minutes why. So, we should be full of joy. By knowing how fortunate we are and reflecting upon it, we should be filled up with joy. Lekpar somla, gawe shingedan. Laman Kappa said, Lekpar som, reflect upon it. And by that, you should fill up yourself with joy. Gawe shingedan. Actually, the words, the way how it's written in Tibetan is so beautiful because gawe shingedan, dang means also light. You know, when we have, it's like if we, how to say, when a person is very happy, the person doesn't need to say any word. Just by looking at the person, we can see that the person is happy, no? It's like if there is some sort of light coming out of the person. Similar, that's what it means in Tibetan, this word. It's like you should illuminate others with your happiness. So, by reflecting upon the preciousness of this, you should be full of light, of happiness. And with an extremely clear, lightful smile. Yeah, we have a brilliant smile. In a state of a brilliant smile, abandoning the three faulty containers, which are, when the container is upside down, I can have the best container, beautiful, clean, but if it's upside down, I can pour as much water as I want, it will not keep any. This is when we are sleeping or when our mind is somewhere else. What happens? We can be in front of the best teacher, it can be Buddha himself in front of me. What am I going to get acquainted with? My own sleep. No? So, this is the first faulty container that we need to abandon. The second faulty container is when the container is on the right position, but is dirty. When it's dirty, it doesn't matter how much pure water I put inside, it's going to become dirty. Like, for example, if I put a little bit poison inside, it doesn't matter. I can put the best water. It will be poisonous. This is when we go to listen already with a negative preconcept, or with anger, or with jealousy, or with envy. You know, we are going to be anyhow, somehow manipulated by these emotions. So at least we should go to listen to Dharma with a neutral mind. If not with faith and respect and joy, at least with a neutral mind. And the last one is this is more difficult, we should be careful not to be like a vessel that is full of holes. So the water go in, but it also goes out. I believe all of us, with some holes we have, no? So as we receive things, something will go away. That's why we need to use them to plant the seeds, to make the seeds that are in our mind to grow. We need to really to put into practice. Otherwise, we forget about things. Okay? So, what is self-healing? In Tibetan, we call gomde, sadhana. Sadhana means recitation and meditation. It's a practice of recitation and meditation. And within the many practices of recitation and meditation, it is what we call a danjuk in Tibetan, which means a self-initiation practice, okay, according to Anuttara Yoga Tantra, which means the highest Yoga Tantra. We will explain a little bit better what it is. Okay? But basically, it's the following. The main goal for us in Buddhism, it's very clear, is for us to eliminate our ignorance, to eliminate hatred, aversion, to develop great love and compassion and wisdom, to develop our qualities not only in a gross level, but most of all in a more subtle level. It's very clear that in all the teachings that it's not enough just to understand things. Once we have understood things, what we need to do? We need to get acquainted with it. We need to familiarize ourselves to a certain level that it becomes natural and spontaneous. There is a big difference of realizing something and actually understanding it. Okay? If I realize impermanence, I can feel it everywhere. Otherwise, it's just sometimes I think about it and I understand it. Okay? And understanding is not enough. Our goal is to change the aspects of our mind that goes from life to life. We need to change our mind of ignorance into a mind of wisdom, hatred into love and compassion, insatisfaction into satisfaction, and so on, but not from a gross conceptual level, from a subtle, spontaneous level. And because of that, we have meditation practices. If it was enough just to understand, we just do philosophy classes, and that's enough. It will be so more easy, no? In a way. But the point is that we as human beings, we are not made out only of conceptual understanding. We have many different levels of existence. When we look at ourselves, we are not made only of whatever brain and conceptual understanding. Our life is much more influenced by our emotions than by our thoughts. Much, much more. So it's not enough just to have good thoughts and to understand things well. We need to be able to deal with our emotions deeply. We need to be able to tame our anger and jealousy and attachment and so on and so on. And we cannot do that only by understanding things. So that's why we need exercises. That's why we need to have what we call practices, which is a way that we can actually train our mind in a non-conceptual level to be more compassionate, train ourselves, which is, the mind is not only the brain, the mind is much more large than that, but we need to train ourselves because we work, the mind functions based on experience. We repeat experience. And because of that, we need to, somehow, what we do in the meditation practices is that we self-induce ourselves to certain levels of consciousness, to certain states of consciousness, in order for that state of consciousness to repeat again spontaneously. Okay? So we could call it like a sort of emotional education that we do to ourselves. It's like a training. It's similar if we need to train, for example, to play an instrument, or if we need to train to do a sort of some sports. We need to repeat it again and again and again and again, and slowly, slowly it will become easier and easier and easier. In the beginning, if I need to play a music, I'm there looking and reading the notes, and I even don't know how to read the notes, and I need to learn them and go one by one. And then slowly, slowly, there I am playing the instrument. After so many times I have done it, what happens? Even with my eyes closed, I don't even think about it anymore. I simply play. Meditation is the same. Why? Because that's how our mind functions. We need to have repetition in order to generate the deeper states of our own consciousness, okay? So that's why I believe, that's my understanding at least, why Buddha's guidance in Buddha's teachings, he didn't only teach us philosophy and understanding, but he also taught us different methods of how to apply such philosophy so that our mind slowly gets acquainted with it, and then we can actually realize it. Okay? For me, all these methods are similar to technology, because technology is something that we use. We don't really understand how it works. When I take a phone and I call someone, do I really understand what is happening? No. How come my voice, that is something somehow analogical, is being transformed into digital and sent to some receiver into many different packages of data that is sent back to another place and once again retransformed into sound? How this is happening? Do we know? Do we use it? Yes. Does it work? Yes. That's what matters, right? Is it possible to understand? Sure. How long does it take? How many years we need to study in order really to understand how it works? You know, even things that we use every day, we turn on the light. Do we really understand what is happening? Most of us not. Okay? But it works. Tantra and the meditation practices somehow are similar because if we do them in the right way, they work. Do we understand how? No. Is it possible to understand? Yes, but it takes a long time of study and understanding. Okay? So, we don't need to have hurry to understand everything right away. It's not possible. Like, sometimes I have a feeling, maybe I hope I am wrong, but this is my sensation sometimes, that from the Western countries, we have somehow a sort of intellectual arrogance. So when we look to something that is coming from another culture or someone else, we may, oh, I can understand it. It's like we have this pretension that we can understand things easily, simply because we studied our mathematics and geography or whatever else. That's not true. There are many things that it takes time to understand. Okay? And in the different part of Tantra, it's very much like that. When we start looking at Tantra, Vajrayana, it may look very mystical to us. No? Oh, we do all these gestures, and we recite these prayers, and we do these visualizations, and what is this, and all these deities, and these strange images, and all of this. And it may look something very much like not so logical and somehow mystical. When I went to study Tantra after many years, not so many years ago, really went to study more deeply, it's one of the most logical and down-to-earth things I've ever seen. It's incredibly clear. Because it's based on our own resources. It's based on the reality we have right now here. Okay? That's why when we really study Tantra in a more deep way, and we are going to not go the deepest way, but I'm going to try to do it these days, a little bit at least. We need to divide it into three parts. The basis, the path, and the result. The basis is, we call Shilam Dresum in Tibetan. The basis are the resources that I have right now. And what are the resources that are being used in Tantra? Body and mind, mainly. So first thing, we need to understand, how is my body functioning? How is my mind functioning? What is my body? It's gross and subtle. My mind, gross and subtle, and so on. We will see that later. Okay? Then with that, what can I do? What's the potential that I have? That's why it's so much down to earth. It's so much, how to say, real. It's like, it's really based on the resources that we have, on what we are. Okay? And even all the practices, the visualizations, and all of this is really saying, okay, that's how we are. We are born, we get old, we die, there is bardo, rebirth. And it's really based on our own experience and how to use this experience as a path to enlightenment. That's what Tantra is really showing us, okay? But we will see it later. As we move along, we'll come back to this point again and again. So, when we start to see self-healing, Buddha taught it originally, many sadhanas, many practices of meditation, as a method for us to practice, as an exercise. So first of all, knowing self-healing is not so useful. To know how to meditate is not so useful if we do not meditate. To know self-healing and not practice it is not so useful. To practice it, it's better. But to practice without knowing, it also gives a limitation. So the more we understand, the more we can direct ourselves, our mind, and our energy in the right way, and the better result we can get also. Okay? So, what I want to do is try to share with you the meaning of self-healing of every part, understand the importance of every step, how it's done, and so on. So Buddha, he taught in different ways to different people, according to their needs and capacities. He taught in Pali to many disciples. Pali was the local language that the normal people would speak, while Sanskrit was being spoken by the Brahmins and by the noble people. And so the local people normally didn't speak much Sanskrit. So Buddha, for the normal people, he spoke in Pali. And when he was teaching to the kings and the ministers and so on, he was speaking in Sanskrit, according to their own capacities and needs. And the Vajrayana path was originally taught mostly to the kings and ministers into the royal context. And not only there, but this was the main context in which Vajrayana teachings were given. And at that time, Buddha had this, for me, very special quality, really, of being able to teach to each one according to their mentality. So after Buddha passed away, when the disciples gathered, there was confusion. Because they said, oh, for me Buddha said this, no, but for me he said that. And then slowly, after some time they were able to manage and they say, okay, all of them are right. Buddha just adapted the teachings to the mentality of each one of us, and we should continue to follow according to our own mentality. And the Buddha never left anything written. The first Buddha's written teachings came 400 years after he died. When all the disciples gathered together, after some time in the beginning, they just gathered together and they made a gathering where everyone was telling what Buddha was saying. And they were passing from generation to generation only in a verbal way. Then it's said that at that time people had a perfect memory. I believe so. There was no cell phone to remember the numbers, no recording, no much writing. People, they really had not so many distractions in life. So they really had very good memory. But then they got to a point where little bit they start to have some confusion, one saying that it's in a way, another one saying it's in another way. And then out of that, finally they decide, okay, let's put it into written. So they wrote everything down. And that's when the first version of the sutras of Buddha, the Tripitaka, or the Kangyur, came from. Okay? But for me, the important thing is that from generation to generation, Buddha's teachings passed by, especially from master to disciple. And the responsibility of the masters have always been to adapt the teachings to the mentality and capacity of the disciples. That's the tradition. A traditional teaching is not a teaching that is kept exactly in the same identical way. A traditional teaching is a teaching that keeps the essence, it's faithful to what it is, but it's able to adapt to its own disciples. That's a traditional teaching. That's why normally all the transmission of Dharma, it's combined into two parts, which we call Lungi Chokor and Tokpe Chokor, which means the turning of the Dharma wheel of the oral transmission, And then we have the other one, which is called the transmission of realizations or experience. So what happened is that the oral transmission, is because if I am going to teach about Buddha's fundamental teachings of the Four Noble Truths, I'm not going to say they are 5 because I think they suit better nowadays to say it's 5. When I talk about bodhicitta, I'm not going to invent a new definition. Okay? Or when I talk, okay, the Dhyani Buddhas, they have not become 7 because I think maybe it's better 7. They are always 5. Okay? There are things that Buddha have taught in a way, and we simply continue to follow because it works well in that way, and we are following correctly. This is the oral transmission. On the other side, there is what is called the realization transmission, which is every master must have the ability to teach what he practices, and he believes, and he experiences. And the better is what he realizes. And this is very, very important. So, what makes Dharma to be alive? A lineage of transmission to be alive. Any lineage of Dharma is alive only in the moment that there is transmission of the teachings, and by such transmission, there are people that are putting it into practice, and by listening to that words and doing the meditation and so on, their life is changing, their mind is changing. In the moment an inner change happens, that means the Dharma is alive. We can have thousands of books and hundreds of libraries and hours of videos and many people doing ceremonies, but if people's minds are not changing for better, through the Dharma is not alive. Okay? So that's what, when we say the transmission of realization, which means the experience which is going from master to disciple. And during all the centuries, the masters always had the ability to adapt the teachings according to the mentality of time. And that's what is tradition. Okay? So, when we look to these meditation practices, in the beginning, they were mostly with meditation and visualization, not much recitation. Okay? All the meditation practices, all the sadhanas, such as self-healing, they have 3 parts that we are going to see each one of them in every step, which are, every part of the practice has these 3 aspects, which are what to recite, what to visualize, and what to think, what state of consciousness to generate. Okay? What's the most important of the 3? The state of consciousness, the mind that I need to generate. Second, the visualization. Least important, the recitation. Okay, what's the most easy one? Recitation. That's why, where is the most emphasis given in the beginning? Recitation. If I come to you and I say, okay, we will do a practice of self-healing, you need to generate, first of all, great love towards yourself. Then you need to generate great love towards others. Then you need to have the awareness of the presence of the holy beings in front of you, and you need to dissolve everything into the great union of great bliss and emptiness, and from that state you will generate a pure yourself with a pure identity in a pure body and a nice and pure environment, and you will invite the holy beings to this place. You will regret of all the negative actions of the past and rejoice of all the positive. You say, okay, stop. That's too much for me. How can I do that? Right? So what Buddha said, he said, okay, in the beginning, just recite. You will start by reciting. The words are precious because there is a saying which says the words are like the walking stick of the old man, of the meaning. The meaning is like an old man, but he needs the words, his walking stick. So why we start? First we start, oh my Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum. What we are doing we really don't know, but something we are doing. And then as we move along, slowly we start to understand the meaning and we start to do the visualization. And by doing the visualization, this by itself will work. And as we move along, we start to generate that right state of consciousness. One step after the other. There is no need to understand everything at once. It's not even possible. one step after the other. So first thing that we learn normally is the recitation, like the Guru Puja. Very often we are not doing the Guru Puja, we are reciting the Guru Puja. It's actually two different things, okay? But we start by reciting. Okay? Once we recite, then after we can slowly learn how to do the visualizations. And then after we can learn what the state of consciousness that we need to generate, and one is bringing the other. Okay? So in the beginning, I'm talking about 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, in India, with the great Mahasiddhas that were transmitting these practices of meditation, there was not much recitation. It was a very direct personal transmission. There was not such thing as like public transmission much, it was one-to-one, most of the times. If not one-to-one, one-to-few. And there was not much recitation. Most of it was visualization and generating the right state of consciousness. And very, very little recitation. Like the mantras were being recited, very small parts. And like this was for a long time. Then suddenly what happened at a certain point was that people were losing the ability to visualize. So in order to keep the visualizations alive, what happened? They were transformed from visualization into recitation. It's like when we do, let's say, the practice of Yamantaka, and we have the transformation of the inner offering. No? We go, Om Reshtriya Vikritanana Hompe, Om Sobhavashuddha Sarvadharma Sobhavashuddha. Okay, that's recitation. Then we have Tomba Nido Gyur, Tombe Ngale Yamle Lon, Ramle Me, Ale Migo Gevos, Umgitendo, Ale Chunga Teba Garbote, Nando Shanga, Dizenga, Tedagitendo, Oma Ahon, Rangituke, Hon Levesetro, Lon Yu, Me, Baratebe, Nangitan Shinko, Ige, some Levesetro, Dorjes, Ungunetim, Bateba, Lundeshu, Hunga Kadotino Gikiancha, Dizito Bracha, Ongi Mamubarchin Pelwar Gyur. This is actually visualization that was made into recitation in order for the visualization not to be lost. If we really see what we need to recite is Om Riti Vritanana Humpe, Om Subhavashuddha Sarvadharma Subhavashuddha Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Om Ahum. That's all. But in order not to lose what we are supposed to visualize, it was transformed into recitation. Many, many, many meditation practices. If we look nowadays, there are thick books like this of Yamantaka, Guya Samaja, Vajrayogini, Heruka, Kalachakra, Tara, Chittamani, all the practices. Most of the things that we recite are actually what we are supposed to visualize. But after some centuries like this, what happened? It became only recitation and people are stopping to visualize. So, what Rinpoche did, it was to once again bring back and say, okay, the real practice is in the visualization, is not in the recitation, so let's go back. Give less emphasis to the recitation and more emphasis to the visualization. Let's make the recitation more simple. And then let's put more emphasis into the part of visualization. That's what Rinpoche did in self-healing. But how did he do it? This is a question that one of my teachers in Tibet, when I showed him self-healing, he made me this question. He said, this is the abbot of Tashilhunpo, one of the most respected masters of Tibet nowadays. And when I showed him self-healing, he was so happy. And he said, but how did Lama Ganchen make it? It's like incredible. And one of the very special things about self-healing, and it's actually the same thing, generally speaking, about Buddha's teachings. Buddha's teachings did not come out of understanding, but out of experience. It's a big difference. Okay? Self-healing didn't come out of a logical research on which was the best way how to adapt a self-initiation text to the modern times. Lama Ganchen first came to the West. I'm going to make it short, because if I let myself go on this, it becomes too long. Okay? But Lama Ganchen first came to the West in 1981, I suppose. Okay, between that time. And when Rinpoche came to the West, he was dedicating himself at the time for healing the body, mostly. And he made a commitment with himself, which was, for 10 years, I would dedicate myself to healing the body. And I would not teach for 10 years. He said, first I need to learn how is the Western mentality. First I need to understand the West so after I can teach. Because Western world is a complete different mentality than Tibet before 59. It's like complete different way of thinking, different way of doing things. So he said, okay, first I need to understand. So for 10 years, more or less, up to 92, 93, Rinpoche almost didn't give teachings. All the time where he would go around, he would, talk a little bit, or he would talk about, need to recognize the teachings were self-healing number 1, which was recognizing one's own real true friends and true enemies, which is already very important. And there was this 4 limitless, and Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakyamuni Soha. That's all. Some people even would make fun of Rinpoche, the Tibetan community, saying, the Lama of only one mantra. Because everywhere he was only teaching Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakyamuni Soha. And he would say to people, you do the mantra. If you feel benefit, you continue. If you don't feel benefit, give up. And 10 years after, and during these 10 years, he was most of the times dedicating really for the body. So he was dealing mostly with sicknesses and dealing with this more gross suffering of the body. And his commitment was 10 years for the body, 10 years for the speech, 10 years for the mind, and after he would go into retreat. That's his commitment. And if we look really what happened is that after 10 years, 92, 93, more or less, he started to teach self-healing. And he had more or less 10 years, a little bit more maybe 12 or maybe 11, 12, something like this, in which he dedicated most of his time into teaching. So he took all the most precious aspects of the teachings that he received and he taught them, putting them in a very simple and accessible way, going directly to the essence. After these 10 years is dedicated time for the mind, which actually have already finished. So he started in 92, then was around 2003, 2004, more or less that time. Now we are 2015, so the 10 years of the mind also passed. And even if we look in the past 10 years, the past 10 years, most of the times Rinpoche is not teaching so much anymore. What he's doing, practicing together with us. So instead of saying, okay, you need to do this and that, he's taking us hand by hand and saying, okay, let's go to the mantra. Om, 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 Om. No? Like really guiding us like a child, hand by hand. To say, okay, now you need to practice. That's what he's saying to us. And then now, at this moment of his life, from my understanding, is mostly the moment of retreat. But something he said to me maybe 1 month ago, something like that. He said, yeah, I have this commitment. And I always had the idea that I would go into retreat, but my retreat will not be a solitary retreat. I would do retreat nearby my disciples and together with everyone. So we are very fortunate for that. Because originally what we all thought was at this time Rinpoche one day would say, very nice being with you, but now I go for retreat. And he's saying this last thing that he taught to me was that it's not going to be in that way. But the point is that in between more or less 1989 and 92, between these years, when Rinpoche went to Borobudur, he had visions. It was like, one time Rinpoche told me, I don't talk so much about my visions because otherwise people will think I am crazy. But simply what he said is that he said, when I was there, I saw the practice of self-healing in the mandala of Borobudur. So self-healing is not coming from a logical, conceptual process of adaptation. Because it's possible to be done. You know, all the teachings on the Tantra are very well structured, perfectly structured. One generation stage practice must have this, and that step, and the completion stage must have this, and that step. It's everything very well structured. It would not be that difficult to say, okay, let's adapt to the modern times, take out this, put some emphasis here, do like this, like that. But that's not how it happened in self-healing. When Rinpoche was in Borobudur, he had this special vision, and it's like an inner experience of feeling something and seeing something, which was the actual practice of self-healing. And then slowly, what he did is he translated to us his vision into words. And that's what became the practice of self-healing. Okay? And this is exactly what tradition is about, because when we go to all the great practices like Yamantaka or Tarachitamani, for instance, they all came from, there is always what we call a long lineage and a short lineage. The long lineage is the transmission from master to disciple up to Buddha. The short lineage is when one master have a direct experience about the practice, and then he shares that with us. That's what is in self-healing. So, Rinpoche had this direct experience of self-healing, and then slowly, what he did, he started sharing it, teaching it. And it's really like giving the essence of Vajrayana path. Because, let's say the truth, who nowadays have time to meditate 1.5 hours, 2 hours a day, reciting a lot of things that we have no idea what they are, in a language that we don't know so well, and even in English it doesn't fit so well. Even if we understand the words, to get the meaning, it's so difficult. It's really so far away. And like the abbot of Tashilhunpo in Tibet, he was telling to me, oh, self-healing is so wonderful because it goes directly to the point. Nowadays we have not that much time anymore to stay with so many complicated things, like Guya Samaja practice. The sadhana is one of the most beautiful sadhanas I have ever seen, really. But to do the full sadhana takes almost a day, to do it once. I did it a few times when I was receiving the commentary in Tibet. It's like tick like this, one time. But why it was done like this? Because when it was taught, it was for people that they had one full-time job that was practicing Guya Samaja. Nothing else. That was their life dedication. They didn't have to worry about anything else other than doing the practice. So it was extremely detailed and so on. But now we don't have anymore this time and space and ability. So self-healing is an extremely traditional practice because it adapts without losing the essence. It adapts the teachings to our needs and abilities of our days. And it's also very, very special because it goes directly to the essence. For example, when I was studying in Tibet, Tantra, many things I understood only because I knew self-healing. So, it is like Rinpoche is really giving all the secrets. And this makes me remember one great master. His name was Geshe Tender. Geshe Tender, he was one of the most well-known Geshes in India for Vajrayana, for Tantra. Because one time there was a gathering in India in one of the Tantric colleges that was organized by the Dalai Lama and some other people, and they made some questions like, okay, which are our doubts about Tantra? And like, there were some 20-something questions, very difficult questions and so on, and only one person was able to answer all of them in a way that really looked correct. And this was Geshe Tender. Very direct, straightforward man. I never had the opportunity of meeting him, but that's what people told me, that he was extremely straightforward. No? Huh? Yeah. He was in Milan for some time in 95, no?
Yeah, Rinpoche forced to take me, the highest yoga tantra for Geshe Tender, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I go straight to the hell because I cannot practice. And he say, you don't understand to take. If you don't do, I hit you.
No, but he was a very special Geshe. Geshe Tender, in beginning, in India, he was not so much known because he was very simple, living in his little house and only with his very few disciples there. But after this main gathering, he became so well known and so respected for his practice and really deep, deep understanding on Tantra. So Rinpoche invited him to Italy, 95, and showed him the practice of self-healing and was there. And he was observing, looking at Rinpoche teaching and listening to it and observing self-healing. And then one day Lama Ganchen was passing by before going to give the teachings. And then Geshe Tender, He was very straightforward. And he was older than Rinpoche also. So he took Rinpoche from the chest, pulled him, and said, "Oh, Kusho," which means it's a very direct way of saying, "Oh, monk." You know? It's like, and he said, "Oh, Kusho, I understood finally what you have done regarding self-healing." And he said, "You have given the root of your heart. Many people would not understand and will criticize you. But don't worry and don't answer to them. I will answer on your behalf." No? And then at that time, Geshe Tender gave some teachings about self-healing. There are some things like when we do Omani Padme Hum, we start with the right hand, or one on the first part, and after we start with the left hand. This was added by Geshe Tender also. He said, okay, need to start in that way, small things. And he was very much touched by the practice of self-healing. So really what Rinpoche did was really go to the essence. When I showed self-healing to my teacher in Tibet, which is, as I said before, one of the most respected masters in Tibet nowadays. Now they made a university in Tibet for Buddhist studies with all the traditions together. Like Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, Gelu, all the traditions. And all the different monks of lamas of all the different traditions, they only accepted one master to teach Tantra, which was the abbot of Tashilhunpo, my teacher. They did not accept anyone else. He said, oh, if he comes, everyone accepted. And when I showed him self-healing, he was so happy. Because he said, oh, that's what you really need to practice. And he called his other disciples, saying, come to listen, come to listen. He said, oh, that's so special. He was really touched by it. This is just to say that all the times that someone that really have a deeper understanding of self-healing sees it, gets touched by it, by how deep and how direct it is at the same time. And at the same time, simple. In the beginning, some people complained that Lama Ganchen, Rinpoche was unveiling the secrets, because he was making secret teachings open to everyone. No? But I have observed it, and I think that's not true. For a very simple reason. I am only unveiling a secret when I say something and the other person understands it, right? If I have a secret and I tell you, but you don't understand, I'm not unveiling anything. And the way how Rinpoche is put in self-healing, it adapts to the capacity of everyone of understanding. So each person understands up to the level where they are able to understand. And it's a practice that can accompany us through all our life. It's not like after 10 years I need to learn a new meditation because now I am already on a higher level, I need something new. It's not like that. For me personally, the more I study, the more I see how deep and profound and vast is self-healing. So it's really something very, very precious, very, very special for us. Okay? But now let's start really with the different points that we need to go through, because we have a lot to see. Okay? But for me, self-healing is really the greatest gift that Rinpoche has given to us regarding teachings and practice. Is something really, really very special. And at the same time, it's very rare to find nowadays, or even in the past, masters that had the courage and the ability to adapt the teachings. Rinpoche said many times, for me it would be much, much more easy to teach you in the same way how I studied. It's much more simple. And if we look, most of the lamas and most of the masters, what most of the times they do, they teach in the same way how they received, which is grateful, but not always fitting perfectly. And it takes courage. It takes trust in order to be able to adapt the teachings. And one other thing which is very important for us to understand is some people may say, oh no, self-healing is not a traditional practice, it's better to do traditional, this is just something adapted for Westerners. So I prefer to follow the so-called traditional sadhanas. Okay? First of all, self-healing is perfectly traditional. If tradition means to do the things exactly as they were done before, then show me one traditional sadhana. The sadhana of Yamantaka, that way they do in all the monasteries, Kyabda Jambedor Jeshin Jeshe. This was written by Paponka Rinpoche. 19th century, 20th century maybe. So it's not that old. And then if we go, it's like this, all the sadhanas were written by lamas that were adapting to the capacity of their disciples. So that's tradition. That's the tradition. I'm quite sure if we go move centuries back, they were done differently. The same practice, the same way, but the words that were said are a little different. The way how it's being done is a little different. The essence is always the same. So that's tradition. Second, sometimes some people may say, oh, self-healing is something that were done for Westerners, so it's not so deep, it's not really like that, it's just like something to make people happy in the West. That's not true. Self-healing for me is the way in which Lama Gangchen is showing to us how much he trusts us. He told me one day, he said, you see, when I came to the West, first I was just teaching few things, but then I saw that people were really interested and they were really putting effort to practice, really bringing to their life. That's why I opened all my secrets and I gave the best that I had. So for me, the teachings of self-healing is really like taking the highest of all the treasures that Rinpoche has and entrusting it in our hands. So one of the meanings of it is, I trust you. And this is something very, very special. Okay? So, as we go through it, first of all, really Rinpoche, one time he told me, he was talking about self-healing, he said, I don't know how I did it. He was really saying, I really don't know how I did it. It's quite amazing, isn't it? I said, yes, Rinpoche. It is. And then I say, oh, it's really special. You know? So, to comment on self-healing is not that simple, because in the sense that what I want to do is just to share with you my understanding, which is not the ultimate words about self-healing. Okay? It's not the right commentary. I'm just sharing with you my experience and my view about it. Okay? So I have a little bit when I studied Buddhist philosophy, I always studied in a very structured way, so I like to put things into structures. Okay? So we will see self-healing, dividing it first into three parts. We call first Shungiton, Töndan, Jugiton, which means the meaning of the text, the meaning of the teaching, and then we'll go at the conclusion by the end. And then in the meaning of the text, the meaning of the teaching, we have it divided into two parts, which is the meaning of the name and the actual practice. Okay? So we start with the meaning of the name. In the meaning of the name, we have NgalSo, Tantric self-healing practice. Okay? So we have NgalSo, Tantric self-healing practice. So we have 4 parts. Okay? Actually, we can divide it into 5 parts, which is NgalSo is one word, Tantric, self, healing, and practice. The word practice can also be called yoga. Okay, so we will see one by one. Okay. So we start with the word tantric, which in Tibetan is called sangha. What does it mean, first of all? Okay. When we talk about the word tantric, in Tibetan it's called actually sangha. Sangha is not the right translation, it's not tantric. The right translation will be secret mantra. Sangha, which means the path of the Vajrayana path. So what does that mean, first of all? First, it means that the practice of self-healing is part of the Vajrayana path, which means, first of all, it's a spiritual practice. So first, to understand the context of self-healing, we need to divide what is mundane and what is spiritual. So, going directly to the point, in some Lamrim teachings it says spirituality is everything that transcends this life. Anything that you do that is only for this life, it's mundane. So all that we do that is only for developing our body, that is only for gaining more money and wealth, for power, for fame, or anything else like this, for pleasures, can we take any of this to the next life? No. So that's totally mundane. So anything that is spiritual, it means it can be a method, it can be a practice, it can be an exercise, it can be a philosophy, it can be many things, but they become spiritual in the moment that what we develop transcends this life. It's also of benefit for this life, but not only. Okay? And if we look from another perspective, it transcends the present moment also. For example, I can put my energy today in many, many things. I can put my energy to gain more money. I can put my energy to have a good health. I can put my energy to look beautiful. I can put my energy to have a good reputation and fame and to have good relationship with others. Okay? Any of these things that I've just cited, can I assure myself that I will have them when I will be 90 if I get to that age? I can put the best of my energy to make money. Can I assure myself that that money will be with me after 20, 50, 60 years, whatever? No. I can put a lot of energy into this body. Can I be sure that I will be healthy? No. I can put a lot of energy to look beautiful. Can I be sure that I will look beautiful? That's already relative, but still. I can put a lot of energy to have very good friends and people taking care of me. Can I assure myself that in 20, 50 years, whatever time, I will have nice people around me taking care of me? No. So, where can I put my energy today that I am sure that will be there to help me? Developing love, compassion, patience. It doesn't matter if I'm going to be rich or poor, healthy or sick, alone or in company, good or bad company. To be patient will help me a lot. To be very patient, to have a lot of patience will help me a lot. To have love and compassion and generosity and stability and wisdom, all of this will help me. It doesn't matter in which situation I will find myself. So the same things that we can entrust ourselves in this life are the same things that transcend this life and in which we can entrust ourselves for the next lives also. So, that's what makes the difference between spiritual and non-spiritual. I can use a so-called spiritual method like meditation or self-healing or many things. But if I don't have the right motivation, it's going to be mundane. If I pass days and months doing retreat of reciting mantras because I want to have the power to subdue others in order to make money. What am I doing? Something mundane. Better to find a good job. Okay. If I go and I learn all the prayers by heart because I want to be the best and I want to show off, what's happening? Mundane. If I want to learn the whole philosophy to show that I am the good philosopher and I know everything, and I want to have the title of a geshe or whatever, and I want to show off that I am really good. What am I doing spiritual? Nothing. So, what makes the difference between if something is spiritual or non-spiritual is first the motivation that we have behind. And self-healing is a spiritual practice, first thing. And as a spiritual practice, the true motivation, there are positive side effects for our health and balance and other things. There are many positive side effects. But what's the true reason why it was made? And what's the true use of it? To develop the qualities that transcend this life. That's the main reason of it. Okay? That's why it's part of a spiritual practice. Within spiritual practices, we can divide it into non-Buddhist practices and into Buddhist practices. There are some teachings that are taught by different spiritual masters that have been in this world, all wonderful. And then there is Buddha Shakyamuni that taught us one path and that we are following. So it's part of the teachings of Buddha. The teachings of Buddha come out of his own inner experience. And what he did was he said, okay, I share with those that like to follow the same path. That's why when Lama Ganchen calls Buddha the inner scientist, it's because Buddha was not a philosopher. Buddha was not a person that was reflecting upon things and having ideas and sharing them. He was researching through direct experience. And by his research with direct experience, then out of that he was sharing to others, oh, for you to gain the same experience, this is what you can do. He was sharing with others the path to gain that. And within Buddha teachings, as we said before, he adapted the teachings according to people's own capacities. So the teachings were divided mostly into two main parts, which originally were called the Hinayana and the Mahayana. Okay? Both of them extremely important. So the Hinayana, which is called the small vehicle, and the Mahayana is called the great vehicle. There is one important thing for us to just observe. When we talk about vehicle, we can have a big car or a small car, but the road is always the same. Okay? So the path is the same. The path to enlightenment is exactly the same. The spiritual path is exactly the same. Then we can choose which vehicle we want. Am I going on bicycle? Am I going and walking? Am I taking a car? Am I taking a helicopter? We can choose. But the path is one. So all Buddha's teachings, they were all there for one path. And the path is not a method. The path is the inner process of development of our own qualities, such as wisdom and love and compassion. That's the path. Okay? So how do we follow this path? Oh, then here come many methods to do that. Okay? Just as I said before, if we go to most of us and we say, oh, you need to understand all of this, you need to meditate on this and that, it becomes too difficult. So how do we start? First, you recite. Similarly, if Buddha would come to all of us and we said right away, oh, you must develop a correct view of reality, and you must open your heart towards all sentient beings without any sort of obstacle, and really have an unconditional love towards everyone. Okay, thank you, beautiful, but that's too difficult. No? If I just need to be part of the group of those that are supposed to love everyone, that's easy. I am Mahayana. That's cool. I love everyone. At least that's the group that I'm part of, you know. No. It looks like a joke, but that's how we do very often, no? So we go into the may all beings have happiness and its causes with exception of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I really love everyone. 5 people are very little compared to all sentient beings. But the real fact is that when I'm not able to love 5, I'm not able to love all of them. Okay? So because we know that we have limits also, Buddha has said, okay, before giving that, let's start with something else, which is the normal path, which is first we need to know how to love ourselves, which is very important. So we should never look down to Hinayana teachings, oh, that's Hinayana, the small vehicle. I take the big one. Okay? First, we need to know what? How to take care of ourselves. Hinayana teachings are extremely important. So, and in order to use the right vehicle, we need to know the path. And what is the path? I must develop my qualities. What that transcend from life to life. So what are the main differences that we have, first of all, between Hinayana and Mahayana? No? as we know, we have a very strong force within us. That is the wish to be happy and not to suffer. It's not a wish. It's a force that we have within ourselves. We can see it even in the most difficult situations. There is always this sort of hope. It's possible to be happy. There is always this very, very strong, maybe the best word that I find is force, really, somehow. This drive to be happy. Now, in Italian, there is a word which is called Brahma, which is a sort of a deep desire. Or in Tibetan, we say Sepa. And it is actually what makes us to do everything, what drives us to do everything that we do, normally. So, what is really the best for my happiness? What is happiness? This is the first thing that we need to learn in our path. And that's what the first thing that Buddha taught in the Hinayana. The first thing that we need to do is to recognize what are the causes of our suffering and how to abandon them. Why do we suffer? Not because we don't have enough money, or we are not beautiful enough, or whatever else reason we may find. It's because of our ignorance, of our jealousy, envy, pride, miserliness, and so on. But it's like, on the root, it's ignorance. From ignorance, it's manifesting selfishness. From selfishness, it's manifesting attraction and aversion. From attraction and aversion is coming anger, jealousy, pride, miserliness, attachment, and so on. Fear. Okay? And when, finally, we suffer. So, the first step is to say, okay, I don't want to suffer. So because I don't want to suffer, I must abandon my mental defilements. I don't want to suffer, so for that I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to act in a violent way, because there is one thing which is called interdependence. Every action I do will have a result. I am responsible of my own life. So law of karma. So do I want to have a good future? Yes. So better I make a good present. I'm not talking about loving all sentient beings and taking care of everyone. First step, let's take care of ourselves. And what does it mean to take care of myself? I must act in a coherent way with what I know is right and wrong. That's the first thing. Then, in the moment that we have an objective that goes beyond this life, it's not only for this life, but I want really to have a good continuity. When we recognize that we are not made out of flesh and bone, that all of us, we sure have this body and we need to take good care of this body, but we are much more than just a body. We transcend this body when we die. There is continuity afterwards. So when we have an intention to take care of what continues, that's the first step in loving ourselves. When we have an identity that goes beyond this life, and when we say, oh yes, I must take care of what continues. And it's also here, not what continues is not something that has nothing to do with this life right now. It's here right now, but it continues. And that's when we develop what is called the small scope, kibuchung, which means my goal in this life is not only this life, but it goes beyond it. So because I want to have a good rebirth, I want to have a good continuity, better I act correctly in this life. So I will not act with violence. I will not let myself be driven by anger or jealousy or envy. And I will act in a peaceful way, with generosity. Why? Because I want to be happy. And I want the best for myself, in the present and in the future. But then what happens is, let's say we put a lot of effort in this life, and we are able to have a very good rebirth. Oh, wonderful. But then, who can assure me then in my future life, even if I have a good rebirth, I will continue to act in a correct way, and the next rebirth will be positive again. Can anyone assure me that? No. How many people we see that have very good rebirth, very nice parents, perfect conditions, nearby spiritual teachers and so on, but really don't care for it? And maybe have a very negative behavior in their life. It happens, no? So, how can we assure ourselves of it? To be born in a good conditions, it doesn't mean much. It's a lot, but it's not much. Like, we need to use it in the right way. So, being brief, what happens is that it's not enough just to have a good rebirth. We must get completely out of the cycle of suffering. I say, okay, I will have a rebirth in a nice family, good parents, taking good care of me, materially everything will be fine. I have even nearby a spiritual path. But no one can really assure me that this will have continuity. So what I need to generate is the intense wish I must get out of samsara, of the cycle of suffering completely. It's not like one life, okay, the next life is good, that's enough. No, I need more than that. I need to eliminate completely my ignorance. I need to be out of the cycle of suffering. It doesn't matter where I am physically, but I don't want to suffer anymore. I am really tired of constantly being driven by anger and jealousy and attachment and aversion and attraction and aversion and anger, and then there is some jealousy here, and then there is fear there, and this and that, too much. It's really tiring, no? I think we all know it. So it's a way when we say, okay, enough is enough. So when we really say, I don't want anymore to be in samsara, I don't want to be anymore in this constant cycle of mental defilements, action, result, which is suffering. How do we react to suffering? Like, for example, if someone is treating me not in a nice way, and I suffer out of it, how is my reaction? Oh, look at the result of the negative actions I have done in the past. Or we are reacting once again with anger. So that's why mental defilements brings action. Action brings result of suffering. Suffering brings mental defilements. This is called samsara. That's the cycle of suffering. Okay? So, when we say, I don't want anymore to be in this cycle, really, that's enough is enough. I really want to get out of it. That's the next level of loving ourselves. It's when we understand that truly happiness does not depend on this life or the next life. It does not depend on having a nice rebirth or not a nice rebirth. I can have the best beautiful body, the nicest, most rich family, and I can have all the best conditions. It's not enough to be happy. We know that, no? Have we ever seen people that have the best material conditions are still unhappy? We don't need to look far. Maybe just look at the mirror. No? We do have very good material conditions, don't we? Are we perfectly happy? No, otherwise we would not be here, I'm sure. But we need to really develop this strong intention in which we say, I must deal with the real causes of suffering. In the moment that we understand what are the true causes of suffering, that they are coming from deep inside, and we are able to look at them and we say, okay, I will deal with them. Then we start following that path. And this is what is called the medium scope, or kibudjin. And this is what is shown inside the Hinayana path, which is abandon non-virtuous actions, accomplish virtuous actions. In other words, abandon any sort of violence, accomplish all sort of peaceful and positive actions. Abandon everything that is of harm, accomplish and cultivate what is of benefit. that's the Hinayana path. That's what we are supposed to do. And the Mahayana cannot exist without the Hinayana. Because the Mahayana is the next step. It's not something completely separated from it. Once I have developed this love towards myself, what happens is that we start to look around. And we start to see others. And how much suffering is there in this world? Remembering that this world where we live is, according to Kala Chakra Tantra, is one of the hundreds of millions of billions of worlds. The solar system in which we are. Which I think, according to modern astronomy, is quite correct, no? So, don't need to think about all sentient beings of all the galaxies and of the whole universe. Let's just think about what we are able to see. How much suffering is there around us? Way too much. Really? We live in a part of the world in which, in one way, we are very fortunate. In another way, we have a lot of mental suffering. Really? But when we start to look at suffering and to have the openness to see and to listen, it's really shocking. It's really overwhelming. Then there are so many parts of this world where people just live like in the hell. And like when we say, okay, the hell, and some people say, oh, the hell, I don't believe in the hell. The hell is just something that was created in order to manipulate people. Has the concept of hell ever been used to manipulate people? Sure. But does that mean that hell doesn't exist? No. Hell is a state of mind. Imagining going to sleep and waking up within a state of a nightmare and not being able to wake up again out of the nightmare. That's hell. And the time is relative, so I can stay in this sort of nightmare for maybe 1 day, 2 hours, 10 days, 1 month, I don't know. And my inner experience is like if tens of years have passed. Okay? So, personally, I really do believe in hell as an inner state of mind of suffering. And if we look around, there are so many situations around us in the world where people are living really in a constant state of suffering and hatred and fear. That's hell. Okay? So when we look around us, all the suffering, our own suffering becomes quite small. And if we start to feel and to open our mind, open our hearts towards others, and we see all the suffering that is around us, we will see gradually really that to take care of, to eliminate our own suffering, to generate our own happiness, that's irrelevant. When we really start opening our heart. And the most beautiful thing actually is that the more we open our heart towards others, the more we start to see the suffering and we wish them to be free from suffering, and we really open our heart, the more happy we become. The more selfish we are, the more unhappy and unsatisfied we are. So being very direct, selfishly speaking, is better to be altruistic. Really thinking about our own selves, what brings the greatest joy is love, is opening our hearts toward others. So the next step, which is called the Mahayana, the great vehicle, why it's called the great vehicle? Because the word vehicle, it means capacity also. In Tibetan, tekpa, what I can carry. While in the first vehicle, which is called the small capacity, I am carrying only myself towards happiness. In the second one, the Mahayana, I am carrying all sentient beings' happiness together with me. I am doing it for everyone. I'm taking care of everyone, so there is a much larger capacity I need. That's why. It doesn't mean one is better than the other. It's a different way of following the same path. And the Mahayana is where we do what we do. We do the meditation, we develop ourselves spiritually. Why? because I must help others. And what is the only way how I can really help others? By developing myself. That's the truth. There is no other way how I can deeply help others other than first developing my qualities. Because the only way how we can help anyone else is by interacting with that person in a positive way. We have no other choice, really. So what's the right way how to interact with everyone? Do I know it? I have no idea. I try my best. Have I ever done mistakes? Every day. So what I need to do, I need to be more wise. I need to develop more wisdom. I need to be free of my own attraction and aversion and jealousy and envy and ignorance, most of all, so that I can really help others in the best way. And that's why I must reach enlightenment. That's why I must develop my qualities to their maximum potential and abandon all my mental defilements, because that's the only true way how I can help others. So, this is what we call the Mahayana motivation. Okay? And it is really like saying, I must develop my qualities so that I can help others. So that's when we say, may I reach Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. That's the meaning of it. Which is an inner state of consciousness. Inside the Mahayana, there are two different ways of teaching. One is called the path of the Sutra, and the other one is called the path of the Tantra. The main difference, both of them are based on loving oneself, loving others, having a correct view of reality, is the same. So even there is a saying that says, Do mena nga hum hum pepe yin, which means without sutra, Tantra is just hum hum pepe. Okay? Which means like the sutra is the basis of all Tantra. And it's true. So the whole philosophy, it's very important and so on. But the main difference is that sutra follows a very gradual path of familiarizing our mind with our qualities and with positive states of consciousness in order to develop such qualities. Okay? So it's the part of developing love and compassion, developing wisdom, accumulating merit, purifying the negativities, and so on. All of this is inside the part of Sutra. In Tantra, or in the Vajrayana, on the diamond vehicle, Vajra means diamond also. Yana means vehicle. There is one difference which is, for me, fundamental, which is it uses not only the mind, but it also uses the body. Because body and mind are directly connected. Okay? So, in order for us to transform our mind in a deeper level, because what is the basic motivation that we're beginning as a spiritual practice? I must develop the qualities that transcend this life. But we are normally so much driven by all the problems of this life and in a such gross level that very difficultly we put our mind really in the direction of next lives. And that we have the ability to go deep into our mind and change the deepest aspects of spontaneous aspects of our mind. Because cultural things, okay, now I was born Brazilian and I grew up in a monastery and I have my own culture, then one day I will die and I will be reborn and most probably I will have a different culture. That's okay. But the deepest aspect of my mind, the spontaneous ones, that's what I need to take care of. And to do that, I need to enter into deeper states of consciousness and generate positive states of consciousness in a deeper level. Positive minds in a deeper state of consciousness. And that's where Tantra is using our body to help us to do that. So, let's put it in this way. The path of the Hinayana is like going on a bicycle. Stable. I don't need so many resources. Not so danger if I fall down. It's not that danger. And I can go clear. Slowly, slowly, I follow my path. The Mahayana is like taking a car. Okay? So I can carry much more. Maybe I can take even a big truck, and I can put many people inside, or a bus, and I can help many people, but I need much more energy. So I need the fuel. And what's the fuel of Mahayana path? The Mahayana vehicle is the great love and compassion towards others. I need that fuel. The Vajrayana is like taking a helicopter. I can go straight forward where I need. I don't need to take turns. But I must know how to fly it well. I must have very good fuel. Otherwise, if the fuel ends in the middle of the flight, it's more danger than having the fuel ending in a car, no? So I must really be able, and it's not so easy. I must have much more abilities in order to fly and go directly what I want. And another thing, I must really know where I want to go, because I'm going quite fast. Okay. So the Vajrayana, it's going straight forward where we want. And there are some conditions that are necessary, and I think as we go along with the practice, we will come out with them. For example, in order to practice the Vajrayana, there must be love towards ourselves. Practice in the sense that it's not that you are not allowed to practice if you don't have these qualities, but in order to fulfill the practice completely, we must have love towards ourselves, love towards others, and correct view of reality. This is fundamental. Okay? So, what is the context within practice of self-healing is? When we say Vajrayana or secret mantra or Tantric. Why practice of self-healing is called Tantric? Because first of all, it's not done only for the sake of this life. It's done for the sake of what transcends this life. It's part of Buddha's teachings. It is within the context of developing love towards oneself and developing love towards others. So the reason why we do the practice is not only for our personal benefit, but it's because I want to develop my qualities in order to be of benefit for others. And there must be also the correct view of reality together. And I will use all the resources I may have, mind, body, and environment, in order to develop my qualities as quick as possible in order to be of benefit for others. That's why I'm in the path of Vajrayana. Okay? That's the context of self-healing. That's why when you say Tantric, that's what it means, basically. Okay? So there is a lot that comes together with it. It's clear? Okay. Let me just see if I didn't left anything behind. And okay, some points here. In the path of the sutra, the emphasis is done mainly on also what are called the 6 perfections. The 6 perfections means 6 qualities that we need to perfect, which are perfecting generosity, perfecting morality, perfecting patience, perfecting joyful effort, perfecting concentration, and perfecting wisdom. These are all inside the Vajrayana path also. This is part of our practice. We need to, in order to be able to go on the path to enlightenment, we need to perfect these qualities. So we need to develop, we need to perfect, we all have these qualities, but we need to perfect them. Generosity, morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. Okay? One other aspect of the Vajrayana path, which is very important, which in Tibetan we call Drebu Lamkir. It's one of the names that is given to the Vajrayana path. Drebu means result, Lam means path, Kir means to take. So to take the result into the path. Let's say I am not a doctor, and I want to be one. So what I do, I start acting as one. Because Okay, forget that nowadays we understand that doctors are the ones that finish their studies as doctors and get the degree of a doctor. Okay, that's not a doctor. Sorry to say, but a doctor is not a person that has the degree as a doctor. That's the person that has a degree of a doctor. Doctor is a person that is using medicine to cure others. That's my point of view, at least. Okay? Sure, it's very good that we have systems of study and then we need to have degrees and all of this. Otherwise, it would be a little bit chaotic, the situation. But still, when a person is a real doctor, when I become a real doctor, in the moment that I, through the knowledge of medicine that I have studied, I'm able to help people to deal with their suffering and to bring them to a state of health and eliminate their sicknesses. That's being a doctor. So I want to become a true doctor. So what I do, I start to act as one. I start to say, oh, what are doctors doing? Oh, they're acting in this way, helping people in that way. So I start to imitate. And slowly, slowly, I get used to that way of being until one day that I become a true doctor. Okay? So this means bringing the result into the path. I am not doing that already spontaneously, but I start doing it, so one day I become like that. Am I a Buddha right now? No. But what I do, I act as one, so that I become one. Because what happens is that in the moment that I emulate being a Buddha, many things are happening. One is that I'm recognizing my own potential of enlightenment. If I act as a doctor, it means I believe I can become one. If I act as a Buddha, it means I believe I can become a Buddha. And this is very important. Within Buddha's teachings, it's extremely important to have faith in ourselves. So I am able to do it. And in order for that, I must recognize my own potential. And in the moment that I bring the result into the path, which means which result? The result that will come out of my own effort, not that someone else will give to me. So I imagine myself as the Buddha that one day I will become. And I act in accordance. And I get acquainted, I get familiarized with it. And gradually I become so. Okay, so this is making it simple, the concept of bringing the result into the path, which we call Dribulamkir. Another aspect important also of Vajrayana is also called the path of transformation, in which we use the resources that we have in a different way. So for example, we all have the energy of attraction and aversion, right? So what is aversion? It's the energy where we want to put something away. We want to push away what we recognize as the causes of our suffering. It manifests with anger. And then we have what we call, for example, Shedang Lamkir in Tibetan, which means transforming anger or aversion into the path to enlightenment. How can I use anger into the path to enlightenment? Because in the path of the sutra, it is said, anger, you must abandon it completely. In the path of Tantra, say, you have anger, good. Generate more anger. I want to see more, come. Show me all your wrath. With one detail, you are directing it in the wrong way. Just change direction. Don't need to change your energy. Just change direction. Because where is all this wrath going to? To eliminate what is generating me suffering. And what is the true cause of suffering? Selfishness, ignorance. That's where you need to direct your own wrath. So when we have yamantaka, there is this fearful. It's quite threatening if we really think about yamantaka. The way how this done, the paintings look like a comic somehow. Now, Tibetan paintings is like the style. It's a little bit like a comic style somehow. But if we really think about this big man with the head of a bull, 34 arms, 16 legs, with all sorts of weapons in his hand, with fire coming from the back of his body, it's quite threatening. And where is all this energy of destruction going to? Against selfishness, against our own ego, against our own ignorance. It's like using this energy to look ourselves and saying there is no more excuse. No but. No excuses for selfishness, no excuses for ignorance. We take the energy of destruction and we use it to destruct the true causes of suffering, which are our own ignorance and selfishness. On the other side, we have other practices in Vajrayana, which is called transforming desire into the path to enlightenment. On the sutra, what we say about desire, is it good or bad? Is it bad? Why? Because the more I have desire, the more I am unsatisfied, the more I want, it's never enough, and I get each time more and more tightened into the cycle of suffering. And Vajrayana said, okay, you have a lot of desire, wonderful. Let's develop more desire. Come. If we look at the many images very often, what they show us, to have less desire or more desire? More desire. Pleasure of the five senses, we do argam, padyam, pushbe, dube. Sometimes we do this as imagining a sort of, ceremony. But it's really like offering the pleasures of the five senses. So it's like really cultivating desire. Why? And what for? To direct the desire into the right path. What do I really want? Or you really want to be happy. That's what we want, no? But these mundane pleasures that we have normally, that's nothing. You really want to have pleasure? Try enlightenment. There you will see what this really pleasure is. So, we take all the energy of attraction and of desire, and where we direct it to? To enlightenment. For the benefit of others. That's how we transform. So as we see, in the Vajrayana path, it's not like going against anything, it's using everything as the path to enlightenment. Because each one of us, we have different natures, no? Some people have more desire, some people have more attraction. So of those that have a lot of desire, what we do, let's use the desire in the good direction. Desire by itself is not positive or negative. It depends what we desire. Aversion itself and violence itself, violence in the sense of the energy of destruction itself, is not positive or negative. It depends what we want to destruct, to destroy, where we are putting our energy to. Okay? So this is one other aspect of the Vajrayana path. And sometimes we say, oh, the path of transforming attachment into the path of enlightenment, transforming desire into the path of enlightenment, transforming anger into the path of enlightenment. And some people may ask, but how is that possible? Okay? We take that energy and we simply focus it on the right way. Okay? Then, okay. The Vajrayana path, we can follow this path through what we call sadhanas, or meditation practices. And we have what we call yidams, which is our meditational deity. An yidam, it is a representation of our qualities developed at their maximum potential. It's like one, like an embodiment of our own qualities. So when we talk about Tara, when we talk about Yamantaka or Guya Samaja or Amoghasiddhi, Ratnasambhava, Akshobhya, Amitabha, Vairochana, all the Dhyani Buddhas, all the different deities that we have, you know. We have so many, like there is Medicine Buddha, and here there is Buddha, as we call the Peace Buddha, and Buddha Shakyamuni, and there have so many different deities that we can see in Buddhism. What are they representing in the Vajrayana? Our own qualities developed at their maximum potential, the embodiment of these qualities. So we have practices in which we recognize one emanation, and we will generate familiarity with it so that we develop these qualities ourselves. And that's the sadhanas that we do. Okay? And self-healing is one practice, is a sadhana, in which normally these practices are divided into two parts, which is called the generation stage and the completion stage. The generation stage is all the part where we will somehow simulate what we want to realize, and it will be mostly mental. So visualization, meditation, but the completion stage is when the actual experience happens. Okay? So when we really go into deeper levels of consciousness, and it's not so much anymore on visualization, it's more on direct experience. That's why it's called completion stage. Okay? So this is just, when we talk about the Vajrayana, just to have some understanding about it. And within it, it is also, we have what is called the 4 classes of Tantra, which is called Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, Yoga Tantra, and Anuttara Yoga Tantra. Basically, it is because in the time of Buddha, there were disciples with different abilities. And according to the openness of mind and the ability of everyone, Buddha taught the different levels of practices. Okay? The highest is called the Anuttara Yoga Tantra. And then within the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, there is what is called the Father Tantra and the Mother Tantra, which is mainly putting emphasis into the part of developing our subtle body or our very subtle body or our very subtle mind in a pure state. But all of them bring to the same result, okay? And it's not like, okay, Father Tantra is for man, Mother Tantra is for woman, or the male deities are of Father Tantra, female deities are of the Mother Tantra. It's not like that, okay? And how to say this? One of the important qualities in the Vajrayana path, and this is also, for me, one of the things that make the difference of the 4 classes of Tantra, is our own ability to go beyond preconcept. Okay? Prejudice. To go beyond prejudice. What I think is right or wrong, and this is right. Why it's right? Because it's right by its own true nature. Why is that wrong? Because it's wrong by its own true nature. So we talk a lot about phenomena being relative and the lack of inherent existence and so on. And actually realizing the true nature of phenomena is one of the very, very important parts of Tantra. We will see this later in the practice of self-healing. In the moment where we need to meditate on it, I will explain a little bit more about it, okay? But if we look at the 4 classes, the practices on the 4 classes of Tantra, there is a strong connection between the capacity of the practitioner to open his mind and to use each and every phenomena as a path to enlightenment and not being able to do it. So the highest Yoga Tantra are basically for people that have the ability to have such an open mind that every phenomena can be used as a path to enlightenment. There is nothing that cannot be used as a path to enlightenment. There is no such a thing as something that is inherently existing good or inherently existing bad. Everything that we have can be used as a path to enlightenment. Depends the way how we use it. Okay? This is an important thing to understand in the Vajrayana path. There are no taboos. There is no such a thing, oh, this we cannot use as the path to enlightenment. No, everything, if done in the right way, can be used as the path to enlightenment. Okay? I know it's a little bit shocking maybe, and maybe we are already looking for some examples of something, oh, this cannot be used. Okay? But what happened is that in a certain context, done in a certain way, every experience, everything that we have can be used as on the path to enlightenment. Okay? And this is why it's also a fast way to enlightenment. Okay? So this is just very briefly when we talk about the word Tantric, Vajrayana. And it's important for us to understand the context in which we are. what's the context? Okay, so we are in a context of a spiritual practice. We are in the context of developing our qualities that transcend this life. We are in the context of the teachings of Buddha, of loving ourselves, of loving others within the correct view of reality, and using all the resources we have to reach enlightenment as quick as possible for the benefit of all. Okay? So this is the context in which we are inside the practice of self-healing. Okay? So this is when we say the word Tantric. So, then we can go to the next part. NgalSo Tantric self-healing. Then we go to the part which is actually the part of healing. Okay, we go to the word healing because I'm following the text in Tibetan, and in Tibetan the title is a little bit other way because Sangha Ranshin Chötap, Sangha NgalSo Ranshin Chötap. But we go to the next step, which is the word healing. When we say the word healing, there are some things that we need to understand. We say Chötap in Tibetan, Kantu Chötap Chesa, Ne Kangle Chötap Chesa, Chötap Kangi Cheba. Chötap Kangi Chö. Which means, first we need to understand what we are going to heal, okay, from what we are going to heal, and how we are going to heal. 3 points. So what are we going to heal, basically? Body and mind. We have container and content, environment and the beings living in it. Okay? Within it, we have the healing of ourselves, which we are the content. Okay? The content that is living in this, existing in this world. Then, within that, what we are going to heal? Body and mind. Okay? So we need to heal our body and mind. We need to heal our body and mind from what? From the sicknesses and unbalances of body and mind. And how we are going to heal? With the different methods. So now let's go through it. Okay? So, first thing, we need to heal the body and the mind. But here we need to understand better what is the body and what is the mind. So normally when we study the Vajrayana path in a detailed way, there's a long part in which we need to study the whole anatomy of our gross and subtle body. There's a whole study of understanding how are the channels and the winds and the drops, and understanding our gross body and our gross mind, and understanding our subtle mind. So we need to study the whole part of the psychology and understanding how our mind functions and all of this. This is all the basic tools that we have. Because what are we going to use on the path to enlightenment? What is the main resource that we have? Body, mind, and environment. That's what we have. So in order for me to use it correctly, I must know what I have. Okay? About the gross body, I'm not going to talk. We have some doctors here. Sure, you will be much better able to talk about the gross body than me. Okay? When I was studying in Brazil in the school, the year that we were supposed to study anatomy, I went to India. So I never really studied the anatomy of our body. But, okay, and I really think we need to have, like, some understanding of the body is very useful. Most of us, we really don't have it, I think. If we would really have a good understanding of our body, we'd have no need to go to the doctor when we feel a symptom. When we feel a symptom, why we need to go to the doctor? Because we cannot understand where the symptom is coming from and what we need to do. Because we have no such deep understanding of our own body. Okay? So, understanding the gross body is important, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I will explain more. We go into understanding more the subtle body. Okay? The subtle body is a part of the body which is also more connected to the practice of self-healing. What to heal? The practice of self-healing is not aimed at the gross body. It's aimed at the subtle body. Sure, by healing the subtle body, does it bring benefits to the gross body? Sure. But that's not the direct aim. Okay? That's a positive side effect. So, to heal, we have mostly the subtle body. The subtle body is composed by what are called channels, winds, and drops. Okay? So channels is basically the pathway of energy in our body, where the winds flow and the drops flow in our body. Okay? So we call channels. We have originally 72,000 channels, which are developed in the following way. First, we have the central channel and the right and the left channel. The central channel starts from our forehead, goes up through our crown, goes down through our spine, straight, and ends where it's more or less the coccyx. Okay? That's what we call the central channel. Then we have the right and the left channel. The right and the left channel start on our two nostrils. They go around up to just 3 fingers below the navel. They enter into the central channel. Okay? And at different points of our body, they turn around. So the first place where they turn around is in our forehead. Then we have at the crown. And when we say turn around, it's like this. Let's say this is the central channel, and this is in this case, the right channel. It goes to the left side, it turns, and then it goes back again, continuing on the same side. And the same thing happens with the other side channel. Okay? So this happens in our forehead, at our crown, our throat, at our heart 2 times, our navel, and then below the navel, it's where actually it's entering inside. Okay? So what happens is that these points is what we call the chakras. Okay? The word chakra means literally wheel. It's like where all the channels gather together, where they meet. Okay? But first, let's see. We have a central channel, a left and a right channel. The right channel is related mostly to our female energy and energy of attraction. The left channel is related mostly to our male energy and the energy of aversion. Okay? It's interesting that similar to when we talk about the brain, the channels are also connected to the other side. Okay? So the right side of our body is the male part, and the left side of our body is the female part. But the channels go exactly in the opposite way. Okay? So what happens is that mostly we use our 2 channels for energy. We don't use much the central channel. Okay? So if we simply observe, most of the time our mind is mostly directed to attraction and aversion. Difficultly, we have a state of mind that is free of attraction and aversion. So by that, what happens is that we use too much the 2 left and right channels, and by strengthening them, they end up, when they turn around, they block the central channel, so that the energy cannot flow naturally. And to reach deeper states of consciousness, we must bring the energy within the central channel. Okay? But now, let's first count the channels. So we have 3 main channels, and we have the places where the channels meet together. And this is where we have actually what we call the so-called chakras. But all the 72,000 channels, they start from our heart. So in the heart, we have first 4 channels on the 4 directions. Then another 4 on the 4 intermediate directions. So we have a total of 8. From each one of these 8 channels is coming another 3. Okay? So we come to 24. From each one of the 24 channels is coming another 3, which we come to 72. And from each one of the 72 channels is coming another 1,000 channels, which makes 72,000. And these are developed through whole of our body. Based on my own reflections and talking to some Tibetan doctors and to some other friends and so on, personally, I'm quite sure about the conclusion that according to our modern way of seeing our body, we could say that the channels are very much connected to our nervous system. Okay? Also because it is said that it's through our channels that the energy can flow, and the energy is also which are called winds. The word in Tibetan is said lung. Lung literally means wind. Okay? But the word in Sanskrit is prana, which means an energy. And one of the examples that is given is like, if I need to raise my arm, I need to send a message, then I want to raise my arm. The message is coming from the mind, but it's taken by the wind. If the wind is not moving, the arm cannot move. If there is a blockage in between, the arm cannot move. So basically, normally what we have a nervous system, and then we have impulses within the nervous system, right? So this is what we will call the winds, mostly. When we call the winds, we have the 5 main winds and the 5 secondary winds. They are mostly different types of energies that flow within our nervous system that have different functions. Like the functions, we have the downward moving wind, which is the wind, the type of energy that will make us to urinate and defecate, and all the energies that everything will going down. And then we have the upward moving wind, that is the one that is bringing the energy upwards. And then we have the all-pervasive wind that is in all different parts of our body, which is all our movements depend on the all-pervasive wind. Then we have the life-sustaining wind, which is in our heart that sustains our life. It's the last one to lose strength. And then we have the fire-like wind, which is the one that is connected to our heat of our body. Okay? So, these are, for example, the 5 main winds. And then we have the 5 secondary winds, which are each one wind for each one of our 5 senses. So we have a wind for the eyesight, ear, for seeing, listening, smelling, tasting, and touching. One wind for each one of them. So these are the 10 main winds. Okay? And many of the parts of Tantra is very much connected with the winds. Why? Because mind and body go always together. If I direct the body in one way, the mind will follow. If I direct the mind, the body will follow. So the example that is given is that the body is like the horse. It's like a blind horse. And the mind is like a horse rider that cannot walk, okay, without legs. So the mind cannot go where the body doesn't go, but the body cannot go where the mind doesn't take the body. It's quite clear, no? Okay? If I want to go to one place, I need my body to get there, right? But if the mind is not saying to the body, stand up, is the body standing up? No. So this is happening also in a more subtle level. So, in order for me to generate certain states of consciousness, it depends also on my subtle winds. It depends also on my subtle energy. So if I have a physical blockage, I will not be able to generate certain stages of consciousness also. Okay? That's why, for example, if I have a very strong blockage in my heart, it doesn't matter how much I try, I will always be nervous. If, in order for me to be able to be more relaxed and calmed, these blockages must be loosened also. Otherwise, I will continue with that difficulty. So, the mind and the body are going together. And we use the body, we use the winds in order to generate different stages of consciousness also. Okay? And as we will go through the practice of self-healing more, by the end of the practice of self-healing, when we get especially to the part which is called the completion stage, then we really see the importance of knowing our winds and knowing how to deal with our winds. Because in order to bring our mind to a deeper state of consciousness, this deeper state of consciousness is described when all our energy, all the winds are absorbed within the central channel. And when the winds absorb within the central channel, that's when we reach a deeper state of consciousness. So we can do that by forcing the winds, by forcing the energy within the central channel, and this will bring our mind to a deeper level of consciousness. So that's why it's very important for us to have knowledge about the winds. The drops, I really have difficulty making a good comparison with our, let's say, modern medicine. I have tried some, but until now I'm not really so satisfied. Drops are some sort of energy, but have also a physical part, which are very much related also to our emotions, are very much related to different stages of consciousness, like the state of dreaming and attachment, and it's also connected with the sexual energy, which are called the drops. So we have this energy in our body that while the wind is something that moves more fast, that's why it's given the metaphor of a wind. And it's also connected with our breath. The drops, they are moving more slowly. That's why it's giving the metaphor of a drop. The name is giving drop. But it's a sort of energy that moves in our body, but it moves more slowly. Okay? But it's very much connected also with the state of awakening, the state of dreaming, the state of how clear our mind is. Depending of the clearness of our mind, the drops are said to be in different parts of our body. And there is also a connection very much also with the part of, like, say, the sexual energy also is connected with the drops. Okay? So when we talk about drops, we have mainly two types of drops, which is called the male energy of the white bodhicitta and the female energy of the red bodhicitta. There's an energy that we all have. It doesn't matter if we are a man or a woman. Okay? So when we talk about the subtle body, basically, it is channels, winds, and drops. Okay? So we have 72,000 channels, which is 3 main channels, and then we have 8. From each one of the 8 channels come 3, which makes 24. From each one of the 24 comes another 3, which makes 72. From each one of the 72 comes 1,000, which makes 72,000 channels. And they are going through all our body. And then there we have points where these channels meet. These melting points, let's say, these encountering points, which we call chakras. We have mainly, there are many chakras in the body, but in the practice of self-healing, we will give emphasis to 5. This doesn't mean we have less than 5, or we have more than 5, or only 5 is the right number. No, there are some practices where it's given emphasis also to other points where the channels meet. But in the practice of self-healing, we put emphasis into 5 chakras, which is at the crown, where there are 32 channels that meet. The throat, where we have 16 channels. The heart, where there are 8 channels. The navel, where it is where we have the 64 channels. And then we have on the secret chakra, which is on the basis of our central channel, in which we have, again, 32 channels. Okay? So these are the places where it's like, let's say, the junction points between the energies channels, where they pass together, where they cross each other. Okay? And when we have blockages in these different parts of our body, then the energy is not flowing well, and then we are not able to develop certain states of consciousness, because there is a direct connection between body and mind. Okay? So on the other side, when I develop anger, I create a blockage in my heart. When we have anger, where do we feel tense? In the heart. When we feel sadness, in the heart. If we really observe, we will feel, for example, when we have fear, where do we feel the fear in the body? In the lower part of our body. Okay? So, even if we have a lot of fear, we can defecate, we can urinate out of fear. Okay? So it's very much connected to the lower part of our body, also the part of fear. So we create blockages in different parts of our body according to the emotions that we generate also. On our other side, when we have this part of our body very much blocked, naturally we will have more of that type of emotion also. So one is how to say, influencing the other. Okay? When we have a lot of ignorance, like of not understanding and so on, where do we feel the blockages? When we try to understand something and we're not able? On the head. Okay? That's why ignorance is on the head. Okay? Where is our attachment mostly coming from? Food. I want something, the mouth, the taste. It's very much connected to our attachment also. Okay? And the insatisfaction, I need more and more and more. Okay? This is so clear with food, no? So, and like this we can go on. Pride, it's very much connected to the part which is in our navel. And also the same thing is also with miserliness. But it's something, it's very interesting for us actually to observe when we have any emotion very strong, where do we feel in the body? With the negative emotions, it's even more easy to feel where it creates blockages in our body, where we can feel it. Okay? And then there is a strong connection between every time that we have an emotion, it is also coming together with a wind, with an energy in our own body. Okay? So, if we know how to direct the energy, we can also know how to direct the mind. And vice versa. If we know how to direct the mind, we can direct the energy. So this is something that we are going to use. In the practice of self-healing, we use a lot this aspect of the body and the mind to direct our energy in the right way so the mind also follows it, and vice versa. Okay? So based on that, we have the gross body that we know, most of it, at least a part of it. The subtle body, which, making it simple, we have these channels, which is more like, I don't know if it's 100% correct, but it's like our nervous system. Then there is the part which is related to the energy that flows within our nervous system, which is called the winds. We have the 5 main winds and the 5 secondary winds. Okay? And then we have the part of the drops, which is these energies which are more connected to our sexual energy and connected also in relation to different stages of consciousness that we experience also. Okay? So this, let's say, is our subtle body. Then we have the very subtle body. The very subtle body is an energy, which we call a wind, very subtle wind, that goes from life to life. So it resides within our heart, in the center of our heart. It is what we call the indestructible drop. The indestructible drop is the union of the sperm of the father and the ovum of the mother, of the male energy and female energy of our father and mother. Then in the moment of conception, they joined together. And the very subtle body and mind that is running in the bardo gets trapped within it. Okay? So, inside the so-called indestructible drop, it's called indestructible because it cannot open until we die. In the moment of death, it opens. Until then, it's always closed. That's why it's called indestructible drop. In Tibetan, we call mi shikbe tigle. Okay? Shik means to open, to end. Mi means no, so the drop, tigle means a drop, the drop that is indestructible, that is not changing in this way. Okay? Which means it's always there. On the upper part of the drop is white, the lower part is red, which is the male energy and the female energy. And inside of this is our very subtle body and mind. Okay? The very subtle body is this sort of this energy. And within this energy, together with it, is our very subtle consciousness. They are inseparable, one of the other. One very important thing of understanding is that mind and body are always inseparable. The mind and the body are always going together. Gross mind is going together with gross body, subtle mind is going together with subtle body, very subtle mind is going together with very subtle body. Even when we die, there is a very subtle body that goes from life to life. Okay? And then later in the practice of self-healing, after the part which we call the Guru Yoga, where we have the self-generation as the deity, the 3 transformations, you will understand better why it's so important, this very subtle body and mind. Okay? So, The gross mind is the mind that perceives the five senses. The gross mind is the mind that can see, what I listen, what I touch, and actually the six senses, because there is also the sense of mind. So all the conceptual understanding and memories, the mind that normally is manifested, that's what we call the gross mind. And most of the studies that we do about the mind is mostly about the gross mind. Okay? The subtle mind are the emotions and the aspects of the mind that are not manifested. When they manifest within the gross mind. For example, at this very right moment, am I angry? No, I'm not angry at all. Does that mean that I don't have anger? No. You bring me an object of anger and then we will see what happens, okay? You look for it well, bring me an object of anger and then we will see what happens. So the anger that I have but is not manifested, where is it? In my subtle mind. The attachment, the desire, the fear, the love, the compassion, the wisdom, all aspects of the mind that are deeper aspects and they are not manifested, they are in what we call the subtle mind. Okay? The subtle mind is basically, we have two main aspects, which is attraction and aversion. And then there is the union of attraction and aversion, which is what we call the neutral state of mind, or the state of mind of union also. Attraction is directly related to what we call the female energy, and aversion to the male energy. Okay? And the union of male and female creates what we call the energy of union, or neutral energy also. Okay? So, the subtle mind, it's actually something very important, because everything that manifests in our gross mind, it's deeply influenced by our subtle mind. Actually, our subtle mind matters much, much more than our gross mind. We suffer more because things that we understand when we don't understand, or we suffer more because of our emotions and feelings and not accepting and feeling guilty and having anger and so on. And if we look to our emotions, most of our emotions are things that we clearly understand, or we feel some things very often, some feelings, and we don't know really where they're coming from. Okay? Even when something happens and I get angry or I feel jealous because of this and that situation, is that situation the true cause of that emotional imbalance or not? No, that's just the condition through which it's manifesting. Okay? So the subtle mind is very, very important. And the subtle mind is directly connected to the subtle body. Okay? So taking care of the subtle body helps us to take care of the subtle mind, and vice versa. Then there is the very subtle mind. The very subtle mind is the mind that goes from life to life. The very subtle mind, it goes beyond emotions. Is a state of consciousness in which there is no attraction, there is no aversion, there is no jealousy, no envy, no love, no compassion, really. There are the imprints of all of this. It's an aspect of our mind where there are the imprints of every action we have done, there are the imprints of every emotion we have. Everything is in there, but it's not manifested in any way. Okay? But it holds all the information of our emotions, of our memories, of our thoughts. Everything is inside there. So that's what we call the very subtle mind. And that's what goes from life to life. One time, Lama Ganchen, he told me that when he was in India in the 60s, one day he was a little bit worried, and he went to his guru, Trijang Rinpoche. And he went to Trijang Rinpoche, and Rinpoche said, "Oh, Rinpoche, I think there was a mistake. I cannot be the reincarnation of Kajang Sabenla, his previous life." He said, "Kajang Sabenla was such a great master, such a realized being, and look at me. I am here suffering a lot, He had a difficult life at the time. Yes, he was saying, I don't even have money to eat. If I get hungry at night, what Rinpoche would do, just drink some water passing by the street. That's all. He needed to choose 2 meals a day or the transportation from one place to the other. That was he needed to choose. He had a really difficult life in this way. And then he was saying, there's so many people that are much better than me, much more happy. If I was really such a realized being, why am I not in a pure land or in a different conditions? Why am I here in such difficult conditions? And what is there so special about me? I don't see anything like that. So maybe there was a mistake. I'm sorry. And then Trijang Rinpoche told Lama Ganchen, he said, I am 100% sure there was no mistake. That you are the reincarnation of Kachin Sapenla, I have no doubts. But when we are reborn from life to life, all our qualities are taken within the very subtle mind and imprints within the very subtle mind. And as we are reborn, very often these qualities need time to manifest, to ripen. There are some highly realized beings that they are reborn, but until these qualities, they have no conditions to manifest, they may look like every other ordinary person. And he told Rinpoche, don't worry, sooner than later you will see your qualities ripening. And Rinpoche told me, like after slowly said, slowly I was understanding what Rinpoche Rinpoche was saying and seeing it the years after. So, our own emotions, our own experiences, our own understanding, all of this remains imprinted in our mind, in our very subtle mind. Then, when we are reborn, we manifest, we have a new subtle mind and a new gross mind. Luckily, huh? Imagine if we need to take the gross mind from life to life again and again. That would be, how many traumas we accumulate. How many difficulties we accumulate from life to life and mixed emotions. It would be really chaotic somehow, no? So, what happened is that this at least is the good news. From life to life, we don't take the gross mind, we don't take the subtle mind, but we take from life to life the very subtle mind. And the very subtle mind is where we have the imprints. So, not always every imprint is manifested. It depends on the conditions that we create. Some imprints will manifest and others will not manifest. Okay? That's why also there is the tradition in Tibetan Buddhism of recognizing the reincarnation of practitioners and bringing them to have the right conditions in order for their own imprints to manifest. I remember one time when I went to the monastery, I went to the monastery out of my own choice. And at that time, Rinpoche, to explain to my parents, and we had one day there, all of them agreed with what I was doing, but still, Rinpoche, one day we had some people there, and he said, you see, Lama's mind is like a pure crystal. But if you put the pure crystal in the middle of shit, it reflects shit. That's why you need to keep it well. You need to put it in a pure place, so for it to reflect the qualities. That's why education is so important. That's why the context in which we are is so important. That's why the interaction that we create is so important. Otherwise, it's also possible that we have some good qualities, and if we do not create the conditions for them to manifest in a subtle and gross level, they will remain just the imprints. Maybe in another lifetime they will manifest. So, but sometimes it will happen the opposite also. Some negative imprints that we never thought they were there suddenly manifest. This is also there. So the very subtle mind is a non-conceptual, deep state of consciousness where all the imprints of every action we do, of every emotion we have are there, and that we take it from life to life. Okay? So gross body, gross mind, subtle body, subtle mind, very subtle body, very subtle mind. We still have one part missing, which is the speech. Speech is our ability to communicate with others. Okay? The gross speech is when we manifest sounds. Okay? and we talk to each other, we can, I would also put inside the gross speech writing and texting and anything is a way how we manifest ourselves towards others. Okay? It's like, okay, the negative karma of using the speech in the wrong way is when I talk, so I write. We are saying. When we write something, we are communicating, we are saying something to someone, okay? So, when we talk about the gross speech, it's our ability to communicate with others. That's the speech. The gross speech is basically our own ability of talking and in a gross level communicating through our senses. The subtle speech, I believe, is because traditionally what is said in the text is the subtle speech is the, how to say in English? Longyu is the light of the wind. Okay? Light is what manifests. Wind is our subtle energy. So what is the subtle speech? It's the energy that we manifest towards each other. For example, when I am feeling love or when I am feeling angry or any other emotion, is there any subtle manifestation of energy that communicates or not? Yes. That's our subtle speech. Okay? And then there is also a very subtle speech, which is the, how do you say, luminance is correct? The luminance of our very subtle body, which is the energy that emanates from our very subtle body. That's called our very subtle speech. Okay? The energy that emanates from our very subtle body, that's our very subtle speech. The subtle speech is the energy that emanates from our subtle body. So, whenever we have any emotion, there is energy being generated and manifesting. That's our subtle speech. And actually, very often we talk with others much more with our subtle speech than with our gross speech. Okay, we are not much aware of it very often, but I believe we talk a lot, we communicate a lot with our subtle speech. Okay? I never heard something about a subtle ear. But sure, if there is a subtle speech, there must be a way of listening to the subtle sounds, no? But we receive the energy and we are able also to understand it and to perceive it also. But this is what we call body, speech, and mind, okay? So this is what that we need to heal. So what do we need to heal? Body, speech, and mind on a gross, subtle, and very subtle level. In the same way, we have also the environment. There is a gross environment, subtle environment, and very subtle environment also. Okay? The gross environment is the world, is what we can see with our five senses. The subtle environment, we could say, is like the energy that is emanated within all the environment around us, and that, for example, between each physical body, there is energy being emanated between each other, and so on. And the very subtle environment, I would say, is the environment, for example, where of the bardo, and is a state that is known, which is known physical, known material state. But there is an environment for the bardo also. This is a more subtle, I would say, the very subtle environment. Okay? So what do we need to heal? Body, speech, and mind on a gross, subtle, and very subtle level. Normally we say body and mind because the speech is part of the body somehow. Okay, it's two different things, but still it's part of it. And then, but we need to heal. But we need to heal it from what? This is the other point, no? So, ne kang le chetab cheba. We need to heal from the sicknesses of body and the sicknesses of mind. The unbalances that are in our body and our mind. Basically, we need to heal ourselves from the aspects of our body and mind that generate suffering. So ultimately, it's the suffering of body and the suffering of mind. Okay? So, but we need to heal not from the symptom. We need to heal from the causes, from the actual sickness. the sensation of suffering and insatisfaction is actually a symptom. And symptoms are precious. You know? It's like when people have this sickness that they don't feel pain. What happens to a person that never feels any pain? Physical pain. They get all broken. After a few years, they are completely broken. Because, I go, there's fire, I put my hand on fire. Suddenly my hand starts to get red. And then my fingers start falling. And so what? I don't feel pain. No? There are some people, I saw some documentaries of people that are born with this type of sickness that they don't feel any pain. Most of them, after very few years of age, they're living in a wheelchair. Completely burned all around and completely broken. Cut it. Because you take a knife, you cut, no pain. Oh, look, something red coming out. There's no any. So normally they die quite young also. So pain is very precious. Because pain is an alarm that is saying there is something wrong with your body. Okay? But it's not enough just to turn off the alarm. We need to know why the alarm is ringing. So it's not enough just to deal with the symptom, we must go to the cause. Okay, we turn off the alarm, I understood, but now we need to go to the cause. Otherwise, suddenly the alarm starts to ring because the house is on fire, and I say, oh, what a noisy alarm, I just turn off the alarm and let the house burn. That's what we do very often when we just take care of the symptom and we don't take care of the actual sickness, okay? Which is the alarm of our mind? Mental suffering, insatisfaction, sadness, okay? And so on. All the mental stages of suffering are the symptoms of our mind being in an unhealthy state, of the sicknesses of our mind. So what do we need to heal? We need to heal our body and mind. From what? From the sicknesses of body and the sicknesses of mind. Okay? The sicknesses of body, we have the sicknesses related to the gross body, which we know more well. But normally when a sickness is in the gross body, it's because it was already in the subtle body before and then it manifests. In other words, if we see, we have a lot of prevention nowadays also, no? Also before, but in medicine we do prevention. What means prevention? I see that there is a sickness that is developing, and I catch it and I heal it before it manifests in the gross body with symptoms. That's what we try to do. Okay? So, in this way, before a sickness manifests in the gross body, very often it's already there. It's already more in a subtle level. It's already working out. Okay? So, we have the gross sickness, but normally when we have a gross sickness, we need to go to a doctor. We need to take medicines, change our diet. We need to have a gross, method. Subtle methods help or not? Sure, they help. But it's not enough sometimes. We also need to go to the doctor. That's why Lama Ganchen even put in some texts, please do not change the doctor with self-healing. Do not substitute treatments of your sickness with self-healing. Self-healing will help for sure, but still take care because the sickness have manifested in a gross level, so we need a gross way of taking care of it also. Okay? Then we have the subtle sickness. The subtle sicknesses are the unbalances of our body, subtle body. We have the energy blockages that we have in our subtle body. That's what we need to cure with self-healing mostly. Okay? So, normally, when we talk about the sicknesses, we divide the sicknesses into 3 types of sicknesses, which are the sicknesses that are created by attraction, aversion, and ignorance.
Can you have blockages in the very subtle level?
Blockages in the very subtle level basically are the imprints in our very subtle level. That are our very subtle blockages. Okay? But what we normally understand by blockages are more in the subtle level. Okay? So, we have the blockages that are in our subtle level, which, for example, we can have a blockage in our heart chakra, and then we are always nervous, and then are sad, or we can have a blockage in our secret chakra. And there is a very strong connection. For example, in a moment in our life, we have a difficult moment, so we experience a lot of anger, or a lot of fear, or some strong emotion. And this creates such tension that afterwards, our body gets used to that type of experience, and we get blockages within our subtle body, and then we are not able to overcome it. Even mentally, we overcame it, but still we are blocked there. Okay? So this is more in our subtle body. So we need to cure also ourselves from the sicknesses also of our subtle body.
Lama, Michel, can you say one time more about this last thing on the blockage?
Okay? What happened is the following. Let's say that I am walking on the garden, okay? And because of a certain situation of danger, I start to walk a lot on one path. I start to walk on one direction a lot. And the more I walk on that direction, what happens to the garden? Becomes a natural path there. Next time I go nearby, there is no more danger. I don't need to take that shortcut again. But which is the way I'm going to go, most probably? The shortcut. Do I need to go through that path? No. But because I am so used to do it, and because the path is open, I'm going to continue to follow that. What happens is that maybe we have a moment in our life where there are external conditions of danger or of adversities. And then we start having certain reactions of fear, of anger, of aversion. We try to protect ourselves and so on. But because these emotions are so strong and we keep them for such a long time, our body, we get used to these pathways of energy in our body. And then after it's these patterns that we follow, so after it's difficult to overcome it. Even the situation is not there anymore. We are blocked on it. So this happens also energetically in ourselves. So this is another thing that we need to cure by showing good pathways of our energy. That's, for example, when we do the Pamlepema, we unblock the blockages that are of our channels and energy. Okay? Then we have the sicknesses of mind. Okay? The sicknesses of mind are basically ignorance, aversion, anger, attraction, desire, unlimited desire, unlimited attachment. All them are mental defilements. This is mainly when we talk about what we need to cure from our own mind. Because when we have a sensation of insatisfaction, of suffering, mental suffering, it's a symptom of what? Of anger, of jealousy, of pride, and ultimately is a symptom of selfishness and ignorance. Okay? So that's what we need to cure. That's what we need to heal. Okay? So what is self-healing? Healing. Mostly. What's the main objective? To heal the unbalances of our body and mind, mainly in a subtle level. By healing them in a subtle level, it will bring automatically and result in our growth level, and it will leave a positive imprint in our very subtle level. Okay? But the ultimate healing, the ultimate self-healing is in the very subtle level. And this is supposed to happen in the practice when we do Om Bishwa Shanti Hum. The part of Om Bishwa Shanti, that's the part of healing the very subtle body and mind. Okay? That's after we'll go through it. Maybe on Sunday we will talk about that, okay? But this is what to heal. So we have body and mind to heal from what? From the sicknesses. And it's very important for me to make the distinction between symptom and sickness. Okay? The symptom, there is nothing to worry much about the symptoms. We don't need to fear the symptoms. We need to fear the sickness. The problem that happens very often to us is that we fear the symptom and we don't care about the sickness. So I think it's quite frustrating for many doctors that they come to the patient, they give them the medicine, and then the symptoms start to go away. And what happens with the patient taking the medicine? Continues to take the medicine or stops? Doctors can tell me better. What percentage of patients really conclude the whole treatment? Less than 50%. Why? Because they are worried about the symptom, not about the sickness. Okay? But we do the same relating to our society, to economy, to many other things. We take care of the symptom. So we shouldn't do that in our spiritual practice, okay? Symptom is one thing, and what's the symptom that we have is suffering. But we should not be afraid of suffering. We should be afraid of anger, of jealousy, of pride, of miserliness, of selfishness, of ignorance. That's what we should be afraid of. Because what happens when we are afraid of suffering? We suffer even more. Even if we look of our suffering, where do we suffer more normally? We suffer more out of direct suffering or of the fear of suffering? Okay? So there's no need to fear suffering. It's like suffering, having more pain of the fear of headache than the actual headache. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with the symptom itself. The problem is the actual cause. That's what we need to fear. So which are the symptoms that we need? The symptoms is suffering. Which are the causes? The actual sickness? The sickness is hatred, anger, aversion, jealousy, envy, fear, selfishness, which are created. Selfishness is actually the root and the main virus behind everything. Now, the main cause behind the sickness is ignorance. That's the root of all. Okay, so that's what we want to cure. How? I'm not entering into details of all the how right now, okay? But I will just read the list of the methods that we have inside self-healing, okay? So, so we have different powers, which in Tibetan we call top. Top means method, it means also power. What are the forces that we have to cure the body and the mind? Okay, within self-healing. So here I have listed 9, which maybe most probably there are more than 9. These are the ones that I have listed, okay? Which is the power of meditation, which is the power of familiarization, the power of concentration, the power of visualization, the power of recitation, the power of gesture, the power of prayer, the power of blessing, the power of the truth, and the power of interdependence. That's what we use in self-healing altogether. Okay? So once again, we use the power of meditation. We use the power of concentration. We use the power of visualization, the power of recitation, the power of gesture, which is the mudra. We use the power of prayer, the power of blessing, the power of the truth, and the power of interdependence. We use all this together in order to heal the body and the mind in a gross, subtle, and very subtle level. The emphasis is in the subtle level and finally the very subtle level. Not mainly because gross level is not that important. Because self-healing is dedicated in which context it's happening? To take care of what transcends from one life to the other. And that's not the gross part. So we need mainly to heal the subtle aspect of our body and mind. Okay? And these are the main methods that we have in order to be able to heal. Because when we talk about healing, we need to remember these 3 parts. What we heal, from what we heal, and with what we heal. So we heal the body and the mind in a gross, subtle, and very subtle level. From the blockages and the sicknesses, let's say, of body and mind, the gross, subtle, and very subtle levels. And we do that with what in the practice of self-healing? With, first of all, the power of meditation. The power of meditation is the power of the familiarization of our mind. One thing just I would like to say now, very briefly, is that when we talk about meditation nowadays, there are many studies about meditation. But actually, most of these studies are not about different methods of meditation, are about the meditative state. Okay? This is something that is important for us to understand. That normally when we talk, meditation is of very great benefit, and then, okay, by doing meditation it will help for the blood pressure and whatever, and so on. Maybe doctors, you can tell me better about what are the physical benefits of meditation.
Brain changes, immune system.
Okay. So, but this is not the benefits of specific meditation. It's the benefit of the meditative state. There are many, many practices of meditation that can bring us to the meditative state. But these benefits are just side effects of the meditation. The objective of meditation can be many different. The meditative state brings these positive side effects. But the true objective, for example, of self-healing, is not to develop our immune system. That's a very good positive side effect. But is mainly to develop a positive identity, to eliminate anger, to eliminate jealousy, to develop love and compassion, to develop wisdom, and ultimately to have a pure identity through which we are able to go beyond all our suffering. That's what we want to get acquainted with. So the power of meditation is the power of familiarization, is by developing a deeper level of consciousness in which we direct our mind to certain, let's call stages of consciousness, for example, feeling of love and compassion and developing a positive identity and so on. As we will go through self-healing, we will see them. By generating these stages of consciousness, we teach ourselves. Then slowly, slowly, it comes out naturally. And the power of meditation is very strong. So one of the methods that we have within self-healing is meditation. The practice of self-healing is a practice of meditation. So it happens through a meditative state. This doesn't mean that all the time that people do the practice, they would necessarily enter into a meditative state. But the practice itself is a practice of meditation. Okay? But I think it's just important for us to make this clear division between a meditative state and a practice of meditation. The practice of meditation brings the person into a meditative state, but that's just a side effect of it. That's not the actual goal. Okay? And it brings many benefits for sure, but they are just one level. Like one thing that I see, which is interesting, is that when we talk about meditation, very often people think about, okay, emptying the mind and just relaxing the mind to a certain level, that you are able to enter into this so-called meditative state. That's very nice, but there's nothing so special about it. Meditation, it means to self-induce our mind into a positive state of consciousness in order for us to familiarize ourselves with that positive state of consciousness in a deeper level. I will induce myself into love, into compassion, into patience, into wisdom. And when I self-induce myself to it, but it's not just conceptually, it's deeper. That's why it's in a meditative state. I generate compassion, I generate love, I generate wisdom, and I remain within that state. But it's not something that came out naturally and spontaneously. It's something that I forced myself into. It is somehow artificial, but it's truth. It's not fake. And by doing it again and again and again and again and again and again, slowly, slowly it becomes more and more easy until a moment when it becomes natural and spontaneous. Okay? And inside self-healing, one of the main tools that we have to heal ourselves is meditation. Then together with that, we have the power of concentration, which is to direct all our energy in one way. We have the power of visualization, which is very strong also. It's a very strong tool to direct our mind. There's the power of recitation, but we will go after dinner, we'll talk about these things, okay? Otherwise, it becomes a little bit too long right now. So it's just for us to see, when we say NgalSo Tantric self-healing, the name is not given just because we put a nice name. I always had difficulty giving names to things because I believe that a name must be able to embody all the meaning within it. And it's very difficult. Whenever I try the name, it's very difficult to find a name. But when we have NgalSo Tantric self-healing practice or yoga, okay? Because in Tibetan the word is Neljor. Neljor, the translation is yoga also. But normally we translate it in English as practice. All the meaning is inside. So we have seen now the meaning of the word tantric, briefly. We started with the meaning of the word healing. So we will see after the conclusion of the different methods of healing, and we will see also the meaning of the word self. Okay? And then after that, we can go to the meaning of the word NgalSo, and then the meaning of the word practice. Okay? To go through all these words, tantric, self, healing, NgalSo, and yoga, practice, we can take weeks, really, if we really go deeply into the meaning in details. Okay? Today I put quite a big effort not to go into too many details on the first part. Okay? Because otherwise we will have no time for the actual other part of the practice. Okay? But it's really important for us to understand the context of the practice. We'd have no hurry right away to go, oh, my Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum. 1 minute, wait. Before we go to understand, okay, because the part of the mudra, what gesture to do, what mantra to recite, that's very easy. That's simple. Just take the booklet, it's written there. Look at the DVD. But what's the meaning? What's the state of consciousness that we need to generate? Why do we do that? What's the context in which we are? This is very important for us to understand. Okay? So this is more or less what I'm trying to do, is to share with you the context of self-healing, first of all. Okay? So it's really important for us just to reflect upon it and not just to, how to say, okay, self-healing is just a title. No. The name is giving a lot of the meaning of what actually it is. Okay? So NgalSo, Tantric self-healing, has a lot within it. Okay? So I say we stop here. And then I think we have Dutch dinner time, right? And after that, Tutla, what time we come back? At 8 o'clock? Okay? Jetsun Lama kutse rapten chi namkar trinle chochur gepada losan tempe dreme sasumgi drove musel tato ne gyurchi nimo dele tsendele nime kunyan delekshin Concho sumge jingelo, concho sumge ngodrupso, sumge tashisho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us the, may they help us to achieve all realization and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. The night of middag.
Mogen de drie vrede onze zegeningen schenken. Mogen zij ons helpen alle realisaties te verwerven en het pad van ons leven bestoeien met variërende betekenis van voorspoed. Wij zullen een afgang betalen. Nacht voor de middag. Nu in de